Alright, so you guys have seen the thumbnail and title for this video, so you guys should know what is in this box. So, let's open this thing up. I gotta say, I think this is the best packaging I've ever seen for an engine that I've bought on eBay. I remember one engine that I bought years and years ago ended up getting here through the mail, I think through FedEx, in a plastic bin surrounded by used beach towels. So, yeah, hopefully this is not a nightmare to unpack because it looks like they filled this with expanding foam. So hopefully this whole thing isn't filled with expanding foam. Oh, that's a lot of expanding foam. Oh boy, I hope this whole thing isn't just filled with expanding foam with an engine in the middle. Something tells me this is going to make a mess. It's trying to get this engine out of this box. How many trash bags do you think I'm going to need to dispose of all this? I guess let's just start peeling away at this stuff. At this point, I'm starting to think this is a little excessive with the foam. Did this entire thing need to be encased in foam? A little less foam next time. I mean, for how much I spent on this engine, it's good that it's well protected. But, I mean, it's only shipping from Florida. And, you know, did you really need all this foam? How am I going to dispose of all this? Alright. I think that's most of the foam. We can at least now get to the engine. So here is a little advice for the people who packaged this crate. If you want to use expanding foam like this, it's awesome that you want to protect the engine, but next time put the foam in a couple garbage bags or even just use a bunch of like Walmart bags filled with a little bit of foam, so therefore when you're unboxing it, it doesn't make a mess like this, because if you pour the foam directly into the crate, the foam sticks to everything and it makes an absolute mess when you're trying to unbox this thing. Alright, that was fun to clean up. Now, in case you guys are wondering how many, it ended up being 7 bags full of garbage and styrofoam, plus a pallet that has a bunch of styrofoam on it that I don't feel like cleaning, plus a pile of 1x4 lumber that I don't feel like cleaning. I'm probably just going to throw this in the bed of the truck and bring it down to the dump tomorrow because, yeah, there's no way this is fitting in my garbage can for Friday. So, check out what I recently bought on eBay. This is a 2020 Kawasaki Ninja H2 motorcycle engine that I bought for a new future project. Now, I don't really want to say exactly what that project is just yet, but what I will say is no, it is not for the mini lift and muscle car. Right now I'm still trying to figure out what engine to use for that project, but this is not that engine. This wouldn't fit in the muscle car. I'm using this for something else. The other thing I'll say is this new project is not off-road. I'm finally building something that's not for off-road. But it does have the capability of going off-road if we want to put some dirt tires on it and take it off-roading, but I'm mainly building it for on-road. Now, for those who don't know what a Kawasaki Ninja H2 engine is, it is a supercharged motorcycle engine. This has a little supercharger built into the engine, and this little thing produces 230 horsepower stock. And I know if I do a little bit of modification, a little bit of tuning, I know I can bump those numbers up, which is awesome. So, now honestly, this engine is not in that great of shape. It is from a wrecked motorcycle engine, so there are some things that are damaged on here. There's an engine mount that's broken, but that's not really the end of the world. I think there's enough engine mounts on this thing. The ECU, ECM, whatever this thing's called, is smashed in. I think I need a new one. The ABS control module, whatever this is called, that's pretty smashed in. That's definitely not going to work. Need to figure out what this goes to. There's a little solenoid that's broken. Got to figure out what that is so I can get a new one. The oil cooler is kind of smashed in, but I think I can bend it back and get that working again. So, what I need to do is I need to first figure out exactly what I need to buy on eBay to get this thing running. So I'm going to go over this whole thing, make a list of everything I need already. ECU, that's pretty important. Need to figure out what this is and just general things of what's missing, what's broken. And I need to buy that stuff on eBay to hopefully get this thing running in this video. So, it is about 2 weeks later. I had to go on eBay and find all the stuff that this engine was missing. Now, there's not every single thing that this engine's missing. There's still some things I decided not to buy because I don't think I'm going to need, as well as some things I'm hoping I just bypass, like the ABS module. I know that thing's smashed, but hopefully I can bypass it, and the ECU, CDI, whatever it's called, that's smashed. I was looking at another used one on eBay, and it's over $500, but then I was looking at the one we have, and the plastic is smashed, yes, but the chip looks fine. So, I don't know, maybe it'll work. Hopefully that'll save me some money not having to buy that thing. So, yeah, now that I'm laying all this stuff on the table, this does not look like much, but this is $1,400 worth of stuff right here. Plus, I was still waiting for another sensor that I bought, and I did buy new oil for this engine, as well as oil filter, and I will have to go out and get a battery for this thing. So, yeah, this thing is getting expensive. Now, let's start working on installing all this stuff on the engine and fixing the things we need to fix to try to see if we can get this thing to fire up. Now, after going through this whole wiring harness, I'm slowly realizing that holy crap, is this the most complicated wiring harness I have ever had to deal with. The wiring diagram covers 4 pages in the service manual. So, hopefully I can figure this thing out and get this thing running. So, first thing we need to do is remove this oil cooler because we need to fix it. Hopefully I don't break it trying to get it out. Try not to scratch it too bad. There we go. And there is some oil in there. So now that I'm looking at this up close and seeing how bad this is, yeah, I am not sure Man, this thing just keeps leaking oil everywhere. I am not sure if I'm going to be able to fix this. Now, I just looked on eBay for another one, and there is one on eBay right now that's almost $200. So I'm gonna try and fix this. If not, I'm just gonna have to spend another $200 and buy that other one on eBay. Let me at least try to bend this back. I doubt I'm gonna be able to do anything, but let me just spend some time trying to fix this. Well, I tried, but yeah, there's no fixing that, and this is just, you know, and it's already starting to crack right here. So, I mean, what I could do if I really had to get this thing to work, what I could do is I could cut this off. I could machine a new one that's a lot longer. I could cut it at a 45, rotate it 180 degrees, so therefore it's a 90 degree, and then weld it onto here. But that would be a really abrupt 90 degrees, and that may affect coolant flow. I mean, I could do that, but I decided, you know what, just screw it. I don't, you know, for something like this, you need it reliable, you need it working properly, so I said screw it. I spent the $200 and bought the other one on eBay. So yeah, just add another $200 to the budget on this thing. So it is shipping from Georgia, so it should hopefully get in a couple days. So for now, I'll just leave this off, and hopefully the new one gets here in time. If not, I'll just put this one back on. Alright, so next thing is I want to install the headers on this project. Now this was the only one that I could find on eBay that fits this engine, and unfortunately, it is damaged pretty badly. This pipe is smashed in and crumpled in pretty badly. So what I'm going to do, just to be able to get this thing running, is I'm going to cut it here, just remove the chunk that's damaged, because I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to have to modify these headers to work for the project that we're putting this thing on, or if I'm going to be able to leave it how it is. Either way, I'm going to have to redo this, because, yeah, there's no way it's going to run with this, you know, pinched that badly. So let's cut this out, I'll install it in the engine, and then we'll fix this later on. Yeah, that's pretty badly smashed in. Look at that. Yeah, it's probably going to sound really weird with one header basically open. Now, obviously, we need fuel to get this engine to run, and we need the fuel pump to do that. Now, unfortunately, we can't simply just take this fuel pump and stick it in a container of gas, because the way that these motorcycle fuel pumps work, the pickup is actually at the bottom and not up here. So this needs to be mounted on the bottom of a gas tank and not the top. So pretty much the only way that I can think of to make this work is just build a small aluminum gas tank. Doesn't have to be that fancy or that big, we just need it to hold a little bit of fuel and make it to where we can bolt this to the bottom of it. For the bottom piece, I'm going to use this scrap piece of aluminum, just so we're not using a good piece of aluminum, because this gas tank is only temporary. Yeah, small, simple, but should get the job done. Alright, so I've been kind of preoccupied with something else for a day and a half. Now, in that time, the oil cooler that I ordered got here in the mail, which is perfect. Now, because it's a little hard to get the camera in here and be able to do anything in here, I'm just going to do it off camera. I will add Loctite to the bolts as well as torque them to proper spec. So, we need to put some oil in this thing. Now, I bought this full synthetic ultimate performance 10W40 oil. Now, I bought 5 quarts. It says that when we remove the filter, it needs 4.5 quarts, so I should have enough. I will be changing the oil filter because there is one on there, but I'm just not really sure the condition of it or how old it is. So let's just change the oil filter out. Good news is the oil looks good. I don't see any shinies, no metal shavings. Get oil on the new O-ring. Alright, oil filter is on. Oh, why is it so tight? Ugh, I'm not liking that sound. Man, why is everything on this engine so tight? So I'm going to first put 4 quarts in because it needs 4.5. But for the half, I may just top it because I'm not 100% sure, you know, how much he drained the oil from this engine. I don't know if he drained most of it or all of it. So for the other half, the half portion, I'm going to, you know, not put in immediately. And then once I turn it over some more, I'll check the oil level and then top it off. Alright, the headers are installed, oil cooler's installed, and this thing now has oil in it, so I think it's now time to start working on hooking up the wiring and seeing if this thing will turn on. So this is the vehicle down sensor, and this is the plug for it. The plug is kind of smashed, but I mean it still plugs in. It just doesn't hold itself in place. And this is a smashed temperature sensor. I'm not really sure what it goes to, but I bought a new one. As long as it's plugged in, it should be reading something. This plug is the ETV actuator relay, and it was missing the solenoid. I have no idea what it does or if it's important, but I bought a new one anyways. Alright, so this is the key that I bought for this thing. Now, I was looking at 2 different ones on eBay, and I chose this one because it was $100 cheaper, and I knew the plug was damaged. This plug got smashed pretty bad, and I was like, that's not that bad. I can fix that, or just, you know, directly connect the wires to this. This is the plug for the key. But what the seller didn't say is the key was also smashed. It was bent pretty bad in 2 different directions. I had to take a hammer to this as well as pliers to try and bend it back, and then it would go in, but it wouldn't really turn, so I had to take a file to it and file some dents out to be able to get it to turn. So I finally got it to work, but it's a little sticky, and it's like, yeah, I'm wishing I spent the extra $100 and bought the more expensive one that was in much better shape. So I don't know. I may buy the other one once we get this vehicle fully finished so I can have a good working key. It doesn't have to, you know, that isn't sticky getting in and out, but at least this one works for now. And I did put electrical tape around this plug because it's kind of touching this other plug because the plastic is smashed, but for now it should work and get the job done, hopefully. Alright, where's the ground? So the ground is here. positives here. Let me go grab the battery. Alright, so for a battery for this thing, I just went to Tractor Supply and bought a lawnmower battery. I was gonna buy a motorcycle battery, but the biggest one they had was like almost $100. This was 40 bucks, and it has more cranking amps, so this should work just fine. Now I'm not gonna plug this in. I'm not gonna plug this in just yet. Let me go over the whole wiring harness, just double check everything's plugged in properly, make sure I didn't miss anything, and then we'll plug it in and see what it does. Moment of truth. See what this thing does. It's working! It's working. The fuel pump tried to prime. Alright, is the screen on? Nice! Look at that! That looks fancy. Is this a touchscreen? There's no buttons on this whole thing, so it's like... I'm almost wondering if this is a touchscreen. I don't think so. Nice. Hazards work. Turn signals work. Nice. So there's some weird, are these like warnings or, whoa. Why does the screen darken? Ah, cool. It's got some light sensors. So when it's dark out, the screen darkens. That's awesome. That is cool. So I don't know if these are warnings or let me look. KEBC, KIVS, KQS, IMU, KLC. I think these are warning power. So let me look these up and figure out what these are. Alright, so last night I went through the manual and figured out what all those error codes are. It's basically just all the stuff that isn't plugged in, like the ABS module, the wheel sensors. There's a lot of sensors that aren't plugged into this thing, so it's just kind of freaking out that it's not plugged in. But it shouldn't keep it from running. But what it may do later is keep the engine only at 50% throttle, which... you know, once we put this engine in the vehicle, we're gonna have to figure that out. But for now, we're just trying to get this thing running. Now, before we put gas in the gas tank, I wanted to see if the engine will turn over. Of course, the switch to start the engine is broken, but I took it apart and I think I'm able to hit it just by moving this plastic piece that's broken. And because I need to figure out about the kickstand sensor, and there's also a like a starter solenoid, what was it called? There's a starter lockout switch that I need to figure out what that does, and you know, does it need to be hooked up or unplugged to get this thing to work? So let's just first see if it'll turn over. Alright, turn it on. It's working! Oh, it turns over pretty slowly, so, but it's turning over. I'm really curious if it's getting a spark, but unfortunately these spark plugs are almost impossible to get to, especially with this wiring harness on top. So, it's always really exciting, especially for how much money I spent on this thing. It's always exciting knowing that it's like, okay, things are working, it's doing things, it's wanting to work, because I'll be honest, it was kind of a huge mystery of the condition of this engine. The guy I bought it from said it ran when crashed, but it's like, well, it crashed. Was anything internally damaged in the engine? And it's like a huge question mark of like, maybe? I don't know. It's kind of just it's a gamble, and it's a really expensive gamble if there is something damaged, but it does sound like it is, we haven't had it fire up yet, but from what I'm seeing, it sounds good. It sounds like it has compression, sounds like it's working, fuel pump's priming. It's good to know that this thing is wanting to fire up. Alright, let's see if it'll actually fire up now. Yeah, hopefully this gas tank actually holds gas because I wasn't really able to pressure test it. It just needs to work for a little bit. Now I don't really have a lid, but just put that over it. Alright, enough stalling. Let's actually do this. I don't know why I get so nervous doing this. It's just an engine, but yeah, you can hear it priming now. Alright, fire extinguisher's right there in case the worst. If it goes haywire, just take that, rip that off. Remember, it's gonna sound, it may sound a little weird because we did have to cut one of the headers, as well as I can't let this engine run for too long because there's no coolant in this thing. We just want to see if it'll fire up. There goes nothing. Come on! Come on! I really want to check if it's getting a spark, because with engines like these, yes, it's turning over, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's getting a spark. Still flashing a million warnings. Where is the, hang on. Where's the tip over sensor? It's right here. It is upright. So there's a, what is it called? I keep forgetting the name. There's a starter lockout switch, which is this wire, and I'm not sure if it needs to be hooked up or not, as well as somewhere, I think the black one right there, is the kickstand switch, and I don't know if that needs to be, hooked or unhooked. It'd be really helpful to know if it's getting a spark, because if it's not getting a spark, then it's obviously not going to run. Yeah, we need to see if it's getting a spark or not. So let me pull that out. Alright, so I didn't pull the spark plug out. This spark plug is actually off of a Hayabusa engine. So it is not. Okay, let me spend who knows how much time figuring out why it's not getting a spark. Okay, so I just spent some time looking up the error codes that this engine is saying. Now it's saying that there are 9 error codes, and I looked them up, and 3 of them are just simple sensors that just aren't plugged in, like the quick shift sensor. I don't have that. ABS hydraulic unit, I do have that, but it's not plugged in. That's the thing that's smashed. And the IMU tilt sensor, apparently I just forgot. It's actually this right here. I forgot about that. I didn't order it. I just ordered it now. It was $77. That's not plugged in. But that's only 3 of the 9 things. The other 6 things are sensors that are plugged in, but it's saying that they're not plugged in and they're not working properly. Like the ETV actuator, fuel pump relay, it's saying the fuel pump relay is not working. Vehicle down sensor's not working. Well, it's right there, it's plugged in. The NOx sensor is malfunctioning, oxygen sensor is malfunctioning, air switching valve is malfunctioning. Those are all things that are plugged in, but it's saying that they're not. So I'm not sure if there's a problem with the wiring harness, or maybe there's just something that because I know there's sub harnesses, but I'm looking at everything and it's like I believe everything is plugged in. This is the beauty of fuel injection. The wiring is an absolute nightmare, but once you figure that out, the engines are awesome. But it's just the solving of the wiring issues is always not fun. Alright, so I have spent all day looking at the self-diagnostic system on the manual, looking at all the codes, figuring out what they do, and trying to fix them, trying to see if any of the codes will stop the engine from firing up. They don't really say that. It just, most of them say that if it's not working, it stops all the auxiliary controls like the power mode, KTRC, KEBC, KQS, all the lights that are flashing when I first turn it on in the orange box. Now, then I was thinking, well, maybe I need to reset the codes. So here's service code erasing. The service codes stored in memory of the ECU can be erased using Kawasaki Diagnostic System. Note, when erasing the stored service code, memory, the accelerator position, and throttle position initial data of the throttle body are erased. Therefore, you must register the initial data to the ECU, wait to the 10 seconds at idle speed, and click enter for C to register the initial data of the sensor position of the ECU. Then, if the Kawasaki Diagnostic System is not available, do the following procedures. And it says step 1, turn on the ignition switch and start the engine. So that right there kind of tells me that if there's error codes, it's not going to stop the engine from firing up, because it says right here, to reset the error codes, it says first step, to start the engine. So maybe there's something else making it to where it's not getting a spark and not firing up. So, and I know you guys don't want to see all the problem solving. All you guys want to see is just this thing fire up for the first time. Trust me, I want to just figure this out and figure out why it's not running, so therefore I can just get it to start. Oh, that thing looks awesome in there. So this is why I bought this engine. This baby is supercharged. I kind of want to turn the engine over and see it spin. Okay, so yesterday was day 3 of trying to get this stinking thing to run. Now, I'm not really sure how much I'm going to be including in this video, because I've been filming a lot of let's try this, turning it over, nothing. Let's try this, turning it over, nothing. Let's read the manual a million times. Let's check this, let's check that. And so far, nothing has worked. So I'm going to try to keep this video short, but I have been filming a lot of trying a bunch of things. Now, so far, I can fairly confidently say that I'm pretty sure it's not the error codes that's keeping this thing from running, because it says to clear the error codes, first thing you gotta do is start the engine and drive it. So I've been going over this whole wiring harness, and I found a plug that I wasn't exactly sure what this went to, and this plug is actually not in the wiring diagram in the manual, which made me when I was first going over this whole thing, trying to find all the sensors I need to get it running, I overlooked this because it wasn't in the manual, but I was looking at it, it's like, I gotta figure out what that is. I figured it out. It's one of the error codes that's pulling up. It is the IMU bank angle sensor, or tilt angle sensor. It's the sensor that measures if you're doing a wheelie, it measures how much of a wheelie, if you're stopping, if it measures all that stuff, how much you're leaning and all that. So, because it wasn't missing in the wiring diagram, I overlooked it. So after finding that, I bought it on eBay, and I am almost thinking that this is the reason it's not running. I'm kind of honestly hoping it's the reason that this thing is not running, because I have checked everything else. Yesterday, I did spend a good amount of time double checking that this thing does not have an immobilizer, because yesterday I was realizing, well, if it has an immobilizer, there's the reason that it could not be running. For those who don't know what an immobilizer is, basically it's a chip inside the key where the ECU has to read a code on the key in order for it to fire up. I spent a good amount of hours trying to figure out how do I figure out if this has an immobilizer or not. I eventually found that somewhere in the manual it lists a certain amount of ECUs, the numbers on these ECUs, and you can read the last 4 of them. The last 4 on this one is 1476, and according to the manual, those codes means that this does not have an immobilizer, which is good, because if it did, I would need to buy a brand new ECU and a brand new key and ignition, but it doesn't, which is good. but still kind of bad because I still haven't figured out why this thing is not running. Now I'm kind of really hoping that this sensor that is missing is the reason that this thing is not running. Because if you type into Google, what are the things that will keep an engine, a fuel-injected engine, from firing up? It is the immobilizer or a fuse that's blown. I've checked all the fuses. Or the kickstand sensor, I've tried that. Or the tilt sensor, which is plugged in and it is facing in the right direction. Or Google says the IMU sensor. If that's broken or not plugged in, or that could be a reason that this engine's not firing up. So I'm kind of really hoping that we can just, once that sensor gets here, we can just plug it in and finally get this engine to fire up. Today is Sunday. Normally, to be able to keep on schedule with these videos, I either try to finish the video either Saturday or Sunday, but because I really want to see this thing at least fire up shortly just to know it runs, and I'm sure you guys want to see it running, what I'm going to do is, because the sensor this IMU sensor, I bought it on eBay a couple days ago, it says that it should get here sometime between Monday and Friday of this week. So what I'm going to do is, part 2 of this project, I can work on that and leave this here and I won't have to move it. So once that sensor gets here, we'll plug it in, and if that does not get this thing to fire up, I am completely out of ideas on things to try. Aside from pulling out my multimeter and like checking and making sure like all the sensors are working properly, I haven't gotten to that level yet. Anyway, once that sensor gets here, we'll plug it in. If that does not work, I'm out of things to try, and we'll have to either get professional help to get this thing running, or I gotta take this thing somewhere. So it is about a week later, the sensor that I ordered from eBay finally got here in the mail. Now the more that I'm reading the manual, the more I'm kind of thinking this may not solve our issue, because according to the manual, sensors like these shouldn't keep this engine from running. All they do is just make it to where certain features like the ABS and cruise control and certain stuff like that, it just makes it to where those features don't work. So I'm kind of thinking that this may not solve, I'm hoping it solves the issue, but it may not. Now, something I keep having to remind myself is this engine wasn't an accident. I mean, the front end was smashed in, a lot of the sensors were broken, and a lot of the plugs on this wiring harness are damaged heavily. So I'm almost wondering, is maybe the wiring harness damaged? So if this doesn't work, then unfortunately I don't think we're going to be able to get this thing running in this video. And I got to spend some time making sure all the sensors are working properly, making sure it's getting all the proper signals and everything. I bought something, it's like 4 wires that you can plug into stuff like this to test, and you can put your voltmeter to it to test, to make sure that the sensors are working properly. So I bought those. If this doesn't work, I got to go through the whole wiring harness and just make sure everything's working, or I could just buy a new wiring harness and just see if that solves it. But I don't know. I'm hoping that this solves the issue, but I'm not holding my breath. So, because I almost think it's something else. But we'll try it. We'll see if this finally gets this thing to fire up. So honestly, I think this is the longest I've ever spent working on a video, because I started this video like 2 months ago when I drove down to Greenville to pick this engine up. So yeah, if we can't get it running now, then it's just, I gotta end the video and we'll figure it out in another video. Come on now, please work. Come on. Dang it. Well, this is disappointing. Alright, so I think I flooded the engine by turning it over. So I unhooked the fuel pump, I pulled all the spark plugs out, And now we have to get all the fuel out, because otherwise it's gonna... It's an interesting noise. Ah! It just drenched me in gas. Yep, it was hydro-locked. Wonderful. Whoopsies. I have to get this gas out, otherwise it's going to leak past the rings and get in the oil and ruin my $95 oil change. Oh. Yep.